It feels like a blur to this day when I worked with him, but Joe Budden is number one. Well deserving. Joe Budden's a content genius, entertainer at his true core. His personality could probably be described by a therapist as some type of disorder, but is always enjoyed or possibly ridiculed sometimes by audience as pure entertainment. A guy who I still, to this day, I'm like, this guy he could create 10 championship teams and each and every time leave the championship team to go make another one. That's LeBron-esque. Where you go, you bring the franchise. I think he's that I think he's he knows how to pick talent. I always give you the story of when we did Everyday Struggle. It was kind of like a really like audition, but it was like a read through. He stopped at 5 minutes in and he says, ask the guy. Let's start on Monday. And I didn't know what the fuck was going on because I only came to debate. That's all I knew. But he's seen enough. He saw the true, he knew what to pick, what personality traits to look at for me to say, cool, if he does that, I know how I'm going to react. And I know how the people going to look at it. That's fucking good content. That's a GM, people. That's somebody who know how to pick talent. That's good. To be a good GM and also to be the star, you really get that. Look at my boy LeBron. He got all the talent in the world, but you let him make the picks. He's bringing in Carmelo Anthony and Russell Westbrook, okay? Joe is the guy. His media career really has spanned longer than people have thought. It didn't only just start with the Joe Budden podcast. I remember being in high school, listening to radio through a radio that was in a room that I shared at the time with my brother. And I remember when Joe took over and he was on the radio and he was like, and I was like, yo, why is this rapper doing the morning show? Because we knew him as Pump It Up guy. But he was engaging back then. It wasn't for that long because he left. We didn't know why. Apparently that was a different time in just music and culture where people didn't think both could exist. Now we see the musicians wanting to also have their personality shown on a podcast or talk forums. We largely got to give a lot of credit to Joe. Someone who, even in working with him in those tumultuous times, I learned a lot from him. I learned, number one, how to navigate, but also how not to navigate. I learned how to realize that you have nothing if you need the guest to validate you. And it was crystallized even by how the whole thing with the Migos thing happened. With him, he was like, I was like, shit's the Migos. I love them. He was like, man, fuck these niggas. They coming here twisting up their face, ain't trying to dap me up. Fuck them. I think he's found his footing after leaving Spotify. He did his network thing for a while. But in the last year, ain't no podcast shoot like Joe Budden podcast. Like, he's giving it back up again. And when Joe Budden's back on his hot take, not giving a fuck about the industry, he has one of the most powerful voices that goes and carries throughout many age demographics and many generations that, again, to me, easily number one right now, clearly. So I like the list. We could make some more changes. Put Vlad up a little bit higher. I'm not going to say put nobody lower. Carisha, with all due respect to her, like, you know, I would definitely have her really high on a power list for women personalities in music. Not necessarily hip hop.